Show me.
2002 was an incredible year for action movies. It's the year that gave us Transporter, Minority Report, the best Lord of the Rings film, and not the best Star Wars film. But that battle on Geonosis, that's solid. We got the always underrated Treasure Planet, and the first Spider-Man. We got Zhang Yimou's masterpiece, Hero. We also got Blade 2, as well as a lesser-known Wesley Snipes film. Undisputed is a dramatic action sports flick written and directed by Walter Hill, the man who directed such films as The Warriors, 48 Hours, and Another 48 Hours, as well as the Bruce Willis film The Last Man Standing. Undisputed is about a boxing champion named George the Iceman Chambers, played by the most jacked Ving Rhames I've ever seen. Serving prison time in the middle of a championship run, he is sent to a prison that has its own boxing league, where Monroe Hutchins, played by Snipes, serves as its undisputed champion.
He said it! He said it!
It's a decent and tense story with entertaining characters, and having finally watched it, it feels like a swan song of the 90s released in the early 2000s. And it has been mostly forgotten. But why then does it have 3 sequels? The original Undisputed is very clearly a gritty sports movie. The film shows us flashbacks of both fighters' careers to show us their legitimacy, as well as the crimes that got them put in the situation they're in, to inform us viewers how such premier athletes could end up in prison. And some of it, looking back at it today, is some pretty heavy subject matter. Some stuff that I don't know if movies today would tackle. At least if they did, they would do it much more gently than they do in this one. The film gives us more backstage politicking that sets up their fight than it actually shows us the characters interacting. And just like any other boxing movie, the fight itself is highly stylized, with each character throwing haymaker after haymaker. The most we get in terms of the fighters' styles is, of course, that George Chambers is the one throwing less but heavier strikes, and Wesley Snipes is throwing more rapid but less powerful strikes. One has power, one has volume. And the fight that the film has been leading up to is just kind of alright. It isn't shot particularly well. A good bit of the fight is obstructed by the prison bars as the camera is getting a view from the outside of this cage, which is clearly a creative choice, a creative decision that gives us the same perspective as the prisoners inside watching the fight, but it does so in sacrifice of the fight itself. And the ending of both the fight and the film are sadly quite anticlimactic. And then the movie just shows us Chambers back free in the outside world, fighting on national television for the championship, never telling us how he earned his freedom. Did he serve his time, or was he proven innocent? We will never know. However, it is more important that we do see our real hero, Hutchins, just chilling in his cell as the entire prison chants his name. Just as disappointing as the movie, at least in my personal opinion, were the numbers at the box office. Undisputed was made on a budget of $20 million. Domestically, Undisputed brought in $12.7 million, and a little over $2 million internationally, bringing Undisputed's total box office to $14.9 million, far under budget. Undisputed was a flop. The critics didn't help, with USA Today calling it a quick release before the real contenders arrive. The Washington Post called it lacking, and LA Weekly said that it was absent of narrative continuity. Undisputed did find some success on the home video market, however. I couldn't find any solid numbers. So how on earth did a flop both critically and financially become a beloved franchise? Enter Isaac Florentine. Isaac Florentine was born in Israel in 1958 to Holocaust-surviving parents. He began his life in martial arts at age 12, and at just as young of an age, Florentine saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. After that, his passion for film was cemented, and he would spend his life combining his love of martial arts and film. In the 90s, he made a few low-budget action flicks before finding work on a little kids show. He would choreograph a few episodes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers before getting to direct a few, including the best episode of my favorite season growing up. Through the 2000s, Florentine would direct a handful of direct-to-video action movies, including one called Special Forces, where Florentine did discover a unknown at the time. Florentine was a fan of Walter Hill, and when the opportunity to direct the sequel to Undisputed came, Florentine knew what direction he wanted to take the series.
The first movie was a boxing movie. I wanted to make this movie more as a mixed martial arts movie, to combine boxing with Muay Thai, with grappling, because I think it makes it more interesting. I think that martial arts look, to me at least, more interesting than just boxing, visually.
Undisputed 2: Last Man Standing is really a repeat of the first film. George Chambers, now at the tail end of his boxing career, is framed for drug possession in Russia and is sent to a new prison with its own fight league. But this time, it isn't boxing, it's mixed martial arts. A very heightened form of mixed martial arts. To bring this idea to life, Isaac needed to bring in some serious talent. George Iceman Chambers would be the only returning character, however Ving Rhames would not return. Instead, the role would be filled by Michael Jai White, an acting veteran at this point, mostly known by action fans for Spawn and Universal Soldier: The Return. Playing opposite Michael Jai White would be that unknown from Special Forces, Scott Adkins. Adkins would be playing a new character, a character that would have a major impact on his career.
But in here, I am the champion.
In the playoff week, like the hurricane, I'm blowing up insane. Gonna turn you into a stain. I'm gonna crush you. Any question, do you think you want to? Can't compete with me, I'm gonna rush you. Send you out to sea, so take another line of milk, I'll cut you down like a tree. Gonna crush you. Flatten out your brain and touch and rush you. Gonna get such pain, they're gonna brush you. Dust you off the ring, bow down low, cause there can only be one king.
Yuri Boyka, the angry tattooed Russian, the most complete fighter in the world. George Chambers, being a boxer, must now add new aspects to his fight game. The wild, heavy striking of the first movie isn't going to work against a guy who moves like this. Bring in a few good martial artists and stuntmen to bump around for our lead hero and villain, and you've got a good setup for some quality fights. Behind the scenes, Isaac Florentine brought in J.J. Perry as fight choreographer, a veteran stuntman, future director of Day Shift, and someone whose passion, much like Florentine, was rooted in martial arts. This sequel to a boxing drama was shaping up to be a serious contender. But did it all pay off? Did a lower-budget martial arts sequel to a flop boxing movie turn out any good? I mean, there were 2 more sequels, so you've probably figured that out. Releasing in 2006, Undisputed 2: Last Man Standing never got a theatrical release in the United States, so there's not any domestic box office. From what I found on boxofficemojo.com, Undisputed 2: Last Man Standing had a short theatrical run in Lebanon, and Lebanon only, where it did gross $1,361. This was the film's total worldwide box office. So with a budget of $8 million, the Isaac Florentine directed sequel flopped harder than the first, right? If you said yes, then you underestimate, or at least forgot, about the power of the direct-to-video market. Undisputed 2's domestic home video sales reached $10.7 million. I couldn't find any worldwide video sales, but mathematically it really does not matter. Undisputed 2 wasn't a mega blockbuster success, but it wasn't meant to be. In the end, the film turned a profit. Florentine's gamble paid off. But just as, if not more importantly, the film found its audience. Action and martial arts fans were blown away by the choreography. Scott Adkins moved like nothing most Western audiences had seen in an English-speaking film. But it wasn't just his maneuvers. Yuri Boyka was genuinely an interesting character. Yes, he was angry and a massive dick. But when it came to the martial arts, he had this powerful sense of honor. When his men poison Chambers in their first fight, he punishes them. Okay, he's dead. That guy did die. That's murder. Boyka, look, he's not perfect.
Double kill.
Boyka points out the advancements and accomplishments in the sports of martial arts throughout history and knows that he was put on this earth by God to take martial arts even further. He's brutal, he's passionate, he's a villain, he's honorable, he's religious, he is the most complete fighter in the world, Yuri Boyka. He spent nearly the entire film showing his brutality, but something about seeing the passion it all comes from made Yuri Boyka more than just a B-movie villain. Michael Jai White had never really truly shown off his martial arts ability on screen to any major extent, but Undisputed 2 was Michael Jai White taking his well-deserved spot in the action world. In a decade full of your Tony Jaa's, your Jet Li's, Donnie Yen's, Jackie Chan's, and Van Damme's, the action world now had two new heroes of martial arts. And one of them was about to take things so much further. Michael Jai White may have been the protagonist of Undisputed 2, but in Scott Adkins, Isaac Florentine found the DiCaprio to his Scorsese. Florentine followed up Undisputed 2 with The Shepherd, a Van Damme-led film with Adkins returning as a villain and getting a good fight against his hero in Van Damme. Florentine next gave Adkins the hero role in Ninja, a pretty good movie with a much better sequel. And in 2010, it was time for Adkins to put the tattoos back on and get in the ring with some new challengers. Undisputed 3 Redemption follows a returning Yuri Boyka. After his loss to Chambers in the previous film, Boyka is found limping around on his damaged knee, mopping up the toilets. When he hears about a multi-prison tournament with the best fighters from around the world, Boyka earns his entry. However, not for the glory or the freedom.
What's gonna happen in the tournament? Against the best fighters in the world. It's suicide, Boyka. It is a suicide, isn't it?
Undisputed 3 Redemption brings together a collection of incredible talent both on and off screen. Florentine returned to direct, of course, and he was given a plethora of martial artists and stuntmen to work with. Each of them bringing a different style to the movie, making it feel like a fighting game came to life. Ilram Choi's Taekwondo, Michael Shannon Jenkins' boxing, Lateef Crowder's stunning capoeira. The electric Marco Zaror matches Boyka's mixed martial arts with more power, reach, and speed. And of course, even after the previous film, Boyka is still the most complete fighter in the world. And behind the scenes, Florentine brought in Larnell Stovall, one of the most underrated action directors working today. Someone who I say, give him the new Blade and let him cook. Larnell is one of the most talented choreographers, coordinators, and action directors working today. Partner him up with the likes of Lateef Crowder and Marco Zaror, and you have a recipe for some of the finest hand-to-hand fight scenes ever put to film. In 2010, Undisputed 3 Redemption did not prove as successful as its DTV predecessor. Similarly, Undisputed 3 never received a theatrical run in the US. However, it did release in the United Arab Emirates, resulting in a box office of $278,000, according to Box Office Mojo. With a budget of about $3 million, it was obviously a flop. but as it goes for these films, that simply did not matter. Fans loved every second of Undisputed 3. I discovered this series by finding Adkins' fight with Crowder in this film on YouTube, and I understood just how special it was. Undisputed 3 features a cavalcade of creative, captivating, clean, complex clashes that 10 years later have all proven to be absolute classics. Undisputed 3 also collected several awards from the Action on Film Festival, a small film festival for smaller budget action films from around the world. Among the several awards included Action Film of the Year. Martial arts fans around the world have appreciated Undisputed 3 for over 10 years, but over in the Middle East, Scott Adkins became a megastar. Remember when I said that the movie made $278,000 in the United Arab Emirates? Well, now in that country, and many others, Adkins can't walk down the street without someone calling him Boyka. Undisputed 3 remains a modern staple of martial arts cinema, but with Boyka moving on to brighter pastures, fans needed to see what his next adventure would be. For the next 5 years, Adkins stayed busy, making direct-to-video martial arts films, as well as the aforementioned Ninja 2, Shadow of a Tear, an instant classic directed by Isaac Florentine, of course. And he even got to play a villain in Expendables 2. What a waste. Despite the numerous films, fans were clamoring for a return of Boyka. Undisputed 4, titled Boyka Undisputed, started filming in June of 2015, but Florentine would not be returning due to a family emergency. Instead, directing duties would be taken care of by veteran 2nd Unit director Todor Chapkanov. I'm sure I butchered that. This time, Boyka is free. He's still fighting and donates a portion of his winnings to a local church. He's doing his best to live a good life. Unfortunately, he accidentally kills one of his opponents in the ring. He makes a promise to make it up to the opponent's wife, and it is there that he discovers that she's working off a massive debt for the fight promoter. A real Mr. Burns type. It is after this that Boyka decides to fight for her freedom, taking on massive odds. And I mean massive odds. Boyka Undisputed kept up the trend of flooding the cast with epic, talented martial artists. This time pulling from a new generation of talent, with Brahim Chab, Emilian DeFalco, Andy Long, and Tim Mann. Mann also served as the fight choreographer on this film, just as he would for several of Adkins' films. That is one of the fun things about this series. With each film having its own choreographer, the fights never feel the same. Even though Boyka maintains his style from his first outing, the pacing in each film's fights differ greatly. The early fights in Undisputed 2 put Boyka on display as an unstoppable machine, the undercranking making Boyka look like he just picked up a screw attack in Super Smash Bros. In Undisputed 3, each fight is far more methodical, as Boyka has actual competition. His fight against Lateef Crowder isn't even the final fight of that film, but he's putting up more of a fight than anything Boyka ever took on before Chambers came along. And with Tim Mann helming the fights in Boyka Undisputed, each fight is at lightning speed as Boyka is taking on the very best around. Not just the scrubs of prison. This is Boyka's Rocky 3, keeping up with the younger fighters. Even though Boyka had been ahead of the curve in his love of fighting, the outside world progressed while he was locked up. Or maybe they just caught up with him. Same as the previous film, Boyka Undisputed released theatrically in the United Arab Emirates, and it nearly doubled the success of Undisputed 3, making $413,000 in its theatrical run. Add that up with the home video sales of $123,000. I couldn't find the budget for this installment, but safe to say it was probably a financial flop. But just like the previous films, that doesn't matter. Boyka Undisputed hit store shelves in 2017 after a long anticipated wait. The film had been finished for quite some time, but I remember the release being delayed for a long time due to just the heavy traffic of people pirating the film. While the fan reception wasn't as positive as the previous film, the absence of Isaac Florentine was felt, most fans were happy to be back in the company of Yuri Boyka, happy to see the next stage of his life and the development of his character. From the brutal yet honorable villain of Undisputed 2 to the kind anti-hero of Boyka Undisputed. Boyka had grown so popular among fans that the fourth film really just could have been Boyka sitting down enjoying a cup of tea and reading the newspaper for an hour and a half, and we probably would have been pretty happy about it. But of course, the fans did come for the fights, and they were not disappointed. Boyka Undisputed's highly skilled and passionate cast of martial artists put together an hour and a half of exponential fight scenes, each hitting at a blistering pace. Boyka Undisputed even brought his story full circle in satisfying fashion. We return to the prison from Undisputed 2, Boyka standing in the ring as the entire prison chants his name. The Undisputed franchise is a shining beacon of the direct-to-video action market. Action B-movies are a dime a dozen, but every now and again there are some diamonds in the rough. And rarely do you get an entire DTV franchise with every entry being banger after banger. Undisputed 2 through 4, also known as the Boyka Trilogy, have come to be loved and appreciated by fans around the world. From the Middle East to Middle Tennessee, from the UK to LA, the Undisputed franchise is put on a pedestal among the great martial arts classics through history. The first Walter Hill film may have gone mostly unmentioned and forgotten since its release, but it has its place in the world of film. Thanks to the vision of Isaac Florentine, that forgotten 2002 film starring Wesley Snipes served as a launching pad for potentially the greatest martial arts franchise of the modern era. Without the original Undisputed, we may not have gotten Blood and Bone or Black Dynamite, and we may have never gotten the meteoric rise and brilliant career of Scott Adkins and Isaac Florentine. In a genre full of franchises like Police Story, Once Upon a Time in China, Zatoichi, One-Armed Swordsman, John Wick, or The Matrix, Undisputed, and specifically the Boyka Trilogy, has gone from direct-to-video B-movies to standing with giants in the eyes of the fans. I myself fell in love with these films the very moment I discovered this fight on YouTube. It's because of these films that I say that Scott Adkins is my favorite actor, and that Isaac Florentine should be considered one of the greatest action directors of our time. Every generation, there are films of any genre that signal a spark of passion from scene to scene and ignite a blaze of excitement within the fans. The martial arts genre has had many of those over these first decades of the century. Ong Bak, Ip Man, The Raid, all films that ignite that same excitement, all films that have managed some level of mainstream recognition. And I would say that the greatness of the Undisputed franchise and the Boyka Trilogy deserves just as much acclaim. And if you disagree, well then...
Get the fuck out of here.